This nibble originally aired on RSBANDB Update, episode 861, Christmas Crits, RuneScape's 2021 PVM meta.
And I think let's start with the Reaver's Ring, because I think that's the good general, like, this was our, of all things, one of the larger hybrid combat updates of the year.
One of the largest hybrid combat updates ever.
Yeah.
I know, David, you were jumping up and down about it when I sent you this doc.
Yeah, because you left it out.
No, I didn't leave it out. I left it in the
Reaver's Ring. Reaver's Ring. Who cares about this trash?
I didn't know where to put it. I didn't know where to put it because it was
hybrids.
under all three styles.
Yeah.
You put it on your finger, Shane.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild because we've had a lot of things that change, a handful of things that change accuracy, a ton of stuff that changes and modifies damage you deal, but very few things that modify the chance to critically strike in the game. It was really just kind of the biting perk and the Grimoire, which was so expensive it was hardly worth talking about at that point.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
And I debated putting in those pages being made easier to get this year, but I realized that the Grimoire is previous year's item, so I didn't put those pages in. But what I want to ask with the Reaver's Ring, it adds a 5% critical strike chance. So I have two questions with this. Mm-hmm. One, how big is 5% critical strike chance in RS? And how big is a 5% accuracy hit? Because I know in the past we've talked about there being bosses in this game where you're going to have 100% accuracy no matter what you do.
Are we talking pre or post what we're going to describe in the magic?
We're talking about where we are right now in December 2021.
Okay. So okay.
So the deal with this is that crit chance is huge, right? I think we can just put that out there as like, we're going to get to Magic and we'll have even larger crit chance increases from the Chandler's Ring, and we'll get there. But the thing to note with this is that crit chance is calculated in two ways in RuneScape, right? You've got your base crit chance, your 5%. If you hit within the top 5% of your ability's damage window, you do 20% more damage. And that's lovely and fine. And any crit chance buffs that are, aside from that, are actually a separate role. So all of the biting perk and these rings and the Grimoire, and that's why they're so powerful, is that they do a separate kind of critical strike where no matter what your damage would have been, it sets it to 120% of the maximum damage. So whereas the old one, you're getting maybe 20% additional damage. With this, if you say that an ability goes from, let's say, 20 to 100, so your average damage is 60%, this is going to set that to 120. So you're now doing double the damage, which is relatively standard for a lot of RuneScape abilities. You're doing double the damage when you crit, on average, instead of 20% more. So these crit chance buffs do... And then we're going to add
another 5% on top of that, right?
Well, no, because your base crit chance only works still with that top 5% of your damage window.
Okay.
So these rings and the Grimoire, like, they do effectively an entirely separate mechanic from what is a traditional critical strike in RuneScape. So hitting these critical strikes is incredibly impactful for your damage output. And so if 5% of the time you do double damage, and that's a very simple, you're doing 5% more damage, is kind of how the math on that works out. And so a lot of things can't crit, right? So bleed abilities cannot critically strike. A lot of ultimate, like damage over time, those kind of things can't critically strike. But for everything that can crit, this crit chance is a big deal. And 5% additional damage from a ring slot was incredibly meta-changing and is incredibly impactful. And so that's one of those things that, like, even without stacking other things on it, like the Fractured Orbital Staff, whatever it is, that functions with crit, the Reaver's Ring, you're taking a 5% accuracy buff. And accuracy was, for the very longest time in RuneScape, this is the, like, I need to be able to make sure that I can do damage in set damage windows, like at next. And for years and years, this was like, accuracy was king, and if I could get a 5% accuracy bump for a 5% damage bump, I would take that any day. So, like, that's the idea with the Elder God Wars, the God Wars 2 weapons that all have 90 accuracy and tier 80 damage. Because it was such a big thing.
And also PVM being locked behind loyalty points for years and years.
For auras, yeah. Because, like, even like the precise perk, which you would think impacts accuracy, is a damage buff and not an accuracy buff. Like it's relatively challenging to get additional accuracy and relatively easy to get additional damage. So for the longest time, accuracy was king. What this ring did was, we're going to sacrifice some accuracy because we have reached a point of power creep where we have accuracy to spare. We're going to turn that into crit chance. They've made this new stat that is now the thing everybody wants to optimize for because accuracy is more or less optimized regardless in many situations.
Yeah,
there's a few places you still don't use it.
It's not really power creep so much as just the boss design has changed.
Yeah,
like because it's not power creep that makes it so we can hit at Solak and Raksha and whatnot. It's just that they have lower defense than bosses 2018 or bosses pre 2018.
Like the Magister was a great example of like hit chance. The Magister is ridiculous. That man has defense set coming out everywhere. Same thing with like the raids bosses with Nex. Regular Nex is still one of the most tanky creatures in the game. All these years later, because that was the idea, was that we don't want you to be hitting all the time. It adds some spice to these encounters. And they moved away from that. They moved away from that big time. We're like, you can absolutely reach 180% accuracy on Solak. Like it is actually doable.
So the question then at the end of the day is that based on what we've heard here, and I'm betting that both of you guys have these rings, and you use them religiously, yes?
Yeah.
On and off.
Okay.
I keep a ring of death some places. Like the Stalker's ring, when we get to that, I do use that everywhere.
You can find full episodes of RSBANDB Update right here on this YouTube channel. If you found this video useful or just enjoyed it, like and subscribe, or leave a comment.